My wife wanted us to have an open marriage, but she deeply regretted it when she saw her sisters flirting with me. Mark, I'm not happy. I want a divorce. When Susan said those words, I felt like the ground had shifted beneath me. I was shocked, yes, but not completely blindsided. After nearly 18 years of marriage, I had noticed her confiding more and more in her friend Rachel, who fancied herself a marriage expert. Rachel's expertise came from having 4 divorces of her own. Mark, did you hear me? I said I want a divorce. Yes, Susan, I heard you, I replied, trying to stay calm. This is serious, and I don't want to respond impulsively. I've always believed I've been a loving husband and a dedicated father. You've never mentioned any problems in our intimacy, so I'm blindsided by this. But if our marriage is making you unhappy, I won't stand in the way of your happiness. It hurts, but I'll support your decision to divorce. Can you tell me, is this something new, or has it been building for a while? Susan's response was cold. Yes, it's been building. I need space, time to explore new opportunities, meet new people. Legally, we have to be separated for 60 days after signing the papers. Who knows? I might change my mind and decide not to go through with the divorce. I took a moment to process her words. I've heard that during the 60-day separation, we're free to date others without it being considered cheating. But we both have to agree to stop the divorce. Either one of us can proceed without the other's consent. Susan looked taken aback, not realizing I had the same freedom. I thought that if I filed first, it would be my choice to continue or stop the divorce. I shook my head. That's not fair, Susan. I'll file too, so we're on equal footing. Does that sound reasonable? Susan hesitated. I suppose. Are you saying you want a divorce too? I thought I was a good husband, father, and partner. I'm not asking for a divorce, but I won't block your future. You've been a great wife and mother, but you wanting more shows I've fallen short. Do you have a lawyer already? No, I haven't gotten the documents yet. I plan to ask Frank Walters. He handled all of Rachel's divorces. Rachel again, I thought. I'll probably ask my cousin Karen to handle my side. I know you don't like her, but she's a tough, kind-hearted lawyer who fights hard for her clients. After a few drinks at the last family gathering, she offered to represent me for free if I ever needed a divorce lawyer. Wow, Susan muttered. So what now? Let's use the next 2 weeks to prepare. We'll start our separation at the beginning of next month. Why do we need to prepare before the separation? Susan asked, confusion in her eyes. I explained, the separation is to see what life after divorce might be like, to help us decide if it's what we really want. It should be a trial period for post-divorce life so we don't end up in a messy situation later. Does that make sense? I guess I hadn't thought about it that way, Susan admitted. Let's go to the kitchen, grab a notepad, and list everything we need to do. I'll make some coffee, I suggested, leaving the bed. When Susan joined me in the kitchen, the coffee was already brewing and I was jotting down notes. All right, there's a lot to consider. We should start by talking about the kids. What do you mean? Susan asked, her tone wary. We need to explain what's happening to them, make sure we give them the same message and reassure them it's not their fault, I said. Susan looked concerned. Breaking the news to our daughters will be hard. They might not take it well. Do we have to tell them right away? Can't we wait out the 60 days and maybe avoid telling them if things change? I disagreed. We need a plan for their inevitable questions about the separation. I think you should stay in the house during the separation to keep things normal for them. We can still spend time together sometimes. Susan was skeptical. But what about our social lives? What if one of us wants to go out and the other doesn't? It could lead to resentment. We need to experience post-divorce life properly. How will the kids react if they see us with other people? We'll need to tell our extended family and friends, too, to avoid any misunderstandings or rumors about infidelity. It's crucial to be consistent in our message and show our love for them, I insisted. Professional counseling might help, but I believe our daughters are strong enough to adapt. I tried to lighten the mood. Who knows, they might gain more grandparents from our new partners, which means more gifts for special occasions. But we'll have to coordinate events like birthdays and holidays carefully. Susan sighed, still looking doubtful but resigned. All right, let's start planning. I pointed out to Susan the importance of keeping our new relationships discreet. I suggested that if either of us started seeing someone else, It would be more appropriate to meet them elsewhere rather than bringing them home while the other parent was around the kids. We then talked about the financial implications of maintaining two separate households, acknowledging that our expenses would increase significantly. I explained that we'd both need to adjust to managing and covering all our expenses independently. I mentioned that we'd have to divide our joint assets evenly, which would mean closing joint accounts and setting up child support arrangements. "Understood," Susan said, looking stunned. "There's so much to address before the first day of separation." "I'll look into renting an apartment closer to my workplace," I continued. "That way the girls will have a bed when they stay over on the nights I have visitation. Typically, the non-resident parent gets to see the kids every weekend and every other major holiday unless we agree otherwise." Susan seemed surprised by my preparedness. "I thought you'd be dating more frequently," she noted. "You and the girls always have so much fun together." "I'll stay involved in their lives as much as possible," I assured her, "but you'll need to be ready to take on some of the responsibilities I currently handle. Weeknight visits might be tricky because of school commitments. You might also need to help your new partner's children with their activities, just like I would if I met someone." We then discussed logistical challenges like managing belongings in two locations and transportation issues, especially if I don't live on the bus route for their school, which could disrupt their routine. "This isn't unfolding," as Rachel assured, Susan mused. "She said you would relent at the mention of divorce, offering to maintain everything you do for the family while allowing me to date others. I'm losing control of the situation rapidly." I could see she was struggling. "I'm stunned, Mark. I need to get some rest. We'll reconvene tomorrow. I'm going back to bed. Sorry, honey, but I need to jot down a few more things before I turn in. You know how my mind works. The more groundwork we lay now, the easier it will be. Good night." Susan barely slept that night. She needed to speak to Rachel and update her on my unexpected response. Rachel would know the next steps. This assurance allowed her to eventually drift off. When she woke up, she immediately noticed I wasn't in bed. "Oh my God, this fool stayed up all night working on the divorce checklist," she thought. But when she entered the kitchen, I wasn't there. Only a notepad lay on the table. She peered into the guest bedroom and found me sound asleep. Returning to the kitchen, she started making breakfast. As everything cooked, she glanced at the notepad. Under the heading Liabilities to Change, I had listed tasks like adjusting the mortgage, homeowner's insurance, utilities, car payments, health insurance, and more. This was on top of the banking changes we had discussed the night before. The following page detailed my anticipated expenses related to my stay in the apartment, and a projected budget indicating the amount of child support Susan would need to maintain her and the girls' current lifestyle. The projections indicated a shortfall of several hundred each month. I had also outlined strategies to cut costs, like giving up my frequent visits to diners and coffee shops, a prospect that seemed to amuse her. She added her own expenses to the list, such as her gym membership, participation in a women's group, and dining out more than once a week. I even included some of the children's expenses, detailing fees for extracurricular activities, uniforms, and other essentials. On another page, I listed tasks Susan would need to handle, including refueling the car, regular maintenance, arranging for a mechanic or plumber when needed, calling for heating and air conditioning repairs, lawn care, car washing, grocery shopping, and so forth. She set the notepad aside, frustrated. Why isn't Mark behaving as he should and giving me what I want? I need to call Rachel before Mark wakes up. Susan dialed Rachel, keeping her voice low. "Hello, Rachel. It's Susan. We have to keep our voices down because Mark is sleeping nearby. How did it go last night?" Rachel's voice conveyed excitement, anticipating a positive update. Instead of asking how he could improve to prevent me from divorcing him, he agreed to the divorce and started listing all the tasks he'd currently handle that I'd have to take on. Mark intends to rent an apartment and only take care of the girls on weekends. He insists we truly separate and behave as if we're divorced to decide if we want to proceed after 60 days. He doesn't seem genuinely frightened by the prospect of divorce. "What should I do?" "Listen, foolish girl," Rachel snapped. "He's trying to manipulate you. He's bluffing. There's no way he'll actually sign any papers. It's a shame he feels the need to enumerate all the small things he does to make you feel more dependent on him than he is on you. Remember, you control the kids and what happens between your legs. Those are the two things that will keep him in line. It's all talk on his part. Don't worry, before long, you and Brian will be enjoying each other, and you'll still have a husband and a home. I hope you're correct, and Brian is worth the trouble. Well, Mark hasn't taken any action yet. I'll remain resolute until I see his next move. Thank you, Rachel. He's getting up. I have to go. Hey, Mark, would you like some coffee? Susan asked nervously as I shuffled over to the coffee pot. I mentioned that drinking coffee late at night wasn't wise. I hardly slept last night. Why didn't you join me in bed? Well, I went for a walk, but I didn't trust myself, I admitted. What do you mean, sweetheart? She asked, confused. I saw you sleeping undressed, and I became quite aroused. You're still the most beautiful woman I know, but I'm hesitant. I fear that if we were to make love, it would only be out of pity to alleviate my pain over the divorce proposal. I wasn't sure I could resist. Darling, we're still married. I belong to you and no one else, at least until we separate. Can't we act like husband and wife until then? I'm afraid not. I'm more convinced than ever that we need to start acting like we're separated immediately, even though the official split won't start until the 1st of the month. When you said you were unhappy, it essentially began then. It'll be difficult for me, but I genuinely want to see you happy, even if I no longer play a significant role in your life. Susan tried to reassure me. Our separation doesn't necessarily mean we have to pursue a divorce. Just relax and give me some time to discover myself. I'm confident we can remain married and maybe even strengthen our bond. I expressed my doubt. I'll take the day off to handle the division of our affairs. David will oversee the maintenance crews today. We need to sort out our finances and accounts as soon as possible. Don't be late for work. He'll prepare breakfast for the children and take them to school. Later at the office, Michael, a charming colleague, came by to flirt with Susan. She felt anxious, but agreed to discuss enjoying music together at a later time. Her thoughts shifted from our separation to memories of her carnal moments with Michael in the elevator. When Susan returned home from work, she noticed signs that I had been there during the day. This sight brought her some relief, and she felt emotionally prepared to confront the financial matters we had discussed. It seemed like she was thinking, I have 60 days to explore while remaining married, and then I'll try to figure out how to engage in a relationship with Michael without getting caught. Sitting at the kitchen table, she reviewed her notebook once more. I had added a few more items to the list. She also noticed a new list titled Possible Women to Date. It consisted of 2 columns, women who had already expressed interest and women I'd like to know if they are interested. The names in the first column startled her, especially when she saw her sister Laura's name. Susan immediately dialed Laura's number. "Hello, Laura, how are you? How dare you attempt to steal my husband?" Susan yelled. "Hey, slow down, girl. What's this about?" Laura asked, confused. Mark made a list of women who told him they wanted to date him, and your name is on it. I'm not sure about the list, but I once mentioned to him after I had a bit too much to drink that if he ever wised up and left your foolish, unappreciative self, I'd be interested in taking your place. Wait, what's happening? Is Mark presenting you a list of women interested in him? Are you implying there's trouble in paradise? Did you catch him, or did he catch you with someone else? That's beside the point. I simply informed him that I needed some space, some time to myself to explore new relationships. Yeah, you're looking for something on the side. Who is it? Or are there multiple? Laura cut her off. No, I haven't been involved with anyone yet. Mark and I are just going through the 60-day separation, and then we'll decide if we want to remain married or not. All right, Laura said, her tone accusatory. You're obviously looking for someone specific, and if you want to be carnal with Mark, there's nothing you can do about it. I'll be pursuing Mark myself once you're legally separated. He deserves better. Susan defended her decision. It was my initiative to separate, even though I praised him as a husband and provider. Laura criticized her actions. You're foolish and naive. Mark is a great provider, husband, father, and lover. Notify me as soon as you're free from the marriage. Laura ended the call. Susan tried to settle her nerves, but it didn't help. She glanced at the list of women again. Lauren, Mark's secretary, was on the list, a stunningly beautiful single mother nearly 15 years younger than him. The thought of her husband dating someone so young was unsettling. There were 2 other women, one of whom was married, as denoted by the M next to her name. The remaining names belonged to women who worked alongside Mark, some of whom Susan recognized from their local area. Despite holding a degree in psychology, Mark had worked as a laborer during college and maintained his affinity for the trade, growing his business to encompass 3 teams. Susan suspected he was evaluating these women's plumbing skills, as well as the state of their hearts. The 3 unnamed women on the list were simply labeled as waitress at diner, barista at coffee shop, and clerk at supermarket. She wondered how many other women found him as appealing as Laura did. She hadn't anticipated him dating while they were apart, but now she pondered if he already had someone else in mind. Mark entered the house and noticed Susan flipping through the notebook. He had a hunch about the upcoming conversation. "Looks like you wasted no time finding a replacement for me, huh?" "My own sister, of all people." "How could you?" Susan retorted. "I was merely catching up with your progress in finding a boyfriend," Mark replied. "What do you mean?" "I don't have a boyfriend. I just want to explore some new relationships," Susan clarified. "What about Michael Hayes?" Mark inquired. "How do you know about that?" Susan questioned. "Michael Hayes? What's your plan today?" "I bumped into Megan, your boss's secretary, at the supermarket during lunch break. She's a notorious gossip. Don't trust everything she says." Susan couldn't resist asking. "What did she say?" "Megan mentioned that you're pretty close with one of our new partners, Michael Hayes. Apparently he visits your office often, and you two have lunch together every day. Considering our company's strict policy against office fraternization, I asked what was going on," I said, watching her closely. "Michael is just an old college friend," Susan responded quickly. "We hang out sometimes, that's all." "Well, from what Megan said, it sounded like he might be one of the men you're considering during our separation," I probed further. "Michael is just a friend. We've barely done anything, just talked. He's always been nice to me, even on my worst days," Susan admitted, her eyes shifting slightly. "Anything more?" I pressed, sensing there was more to the story. Susan hesitated, her expression revealing a hint of guilt. "Did you do anything that would upset his wife?" I continued. "Wife? He's not married." "Who told you that?" she exclaimed. "I found out on his Facebook page," I replied. "Is this Michael Hayes we're talking about?" "Yes, but he never mentioned a wife," she said, looking puzzled. "His profile says he's married to Victoria and has 2 sons," I revealed. "It was updated just 3 days ago, and his wife's posts suggest they're still very much together." Susan looked shocked. "I had no idea he was married. I would never do anything to break up a marriage." "Seems like you're okay with breaking up our own marriage, though," I shot back, feeling a pang of bitterness. There was a heavy silence as Susan realized she was cornered. Michael was the main reason she was contemplating ending things with me, but she couldn't admit that now. Well, he was just one of several men I might consider dating. "I can make a list just like you," she deflected. "Oh my God, I just remembered something crucial. If we decide to stay married after the separation, we need to exchange medical reports to ensure we're both free of sexually transmitted diseases," I interjected. "You're being ridiculous," Susan snapped. "It's just a precaution. I wasn't really planning on dating anyone, especially since it's only for 60 days. But if I feel the urge, I can find someone. I'm sure you'd want to feel safe, too. It's not just about you. It's about who you're with and who they've been with," I explained calmly. "Fine, whatever," she muttered. "So what's next on your to-do list?" "Well, I've got a lot on my plate, starting with sorting out our finances and accounts. Dealing with the mortgage, utilities, and the like will be next. Oh, I found a potential apartment closer to my workplace. Lauren, my secretary, works as a night manager at the Royal Arms. They have a 2-bedroom unit available, and if I become an apartment maintenance specialist, I could get a 50% discount on rent. That means more money for you and the kids. You haven't signed the lease yet, have you?" "We have 60 days. Maybe you won't need to move out," Susan suggested, trying to keep her voice steady. "No, I haven't finalized the lease yet. Lauren mentioned they typically don't do month-to-month rentals, but she might make an exception for 60 days. When she found out about the divorce, she expressed interest in me. I was surprised, given the age gap and all. I had no clue she found me attractive. I declined politely, citing workplace rules against employees and managers having personal relationships. She suggested finding another job if that was the issue. "That's why I mentioned it on the list," I explained. Susan was fuming inside but held her tongue. Without waiting for her response, I continued. "Another piece of news you might appreciate: I booked 2 tickets for a 7-day Florida vacation. It was supposed to be a surprise for our 18th anniversary. Susan's demeanor shifted instantly. "Florida? Oh, Mark, you know how much I've always wanted to go there. This is amazing. I can't wait to relax on the beach and swim in the ocean. Thank you, thank you." But my expression remained serious. "We won't be going to Florida together." When you mentioned divorce, I realized we might not make it to our 18th anniversary. I tried to cancel and get a refund, but it was too late. They only offered a $20 refund. I realized the trip to Florida is more your dream than mine, so I had them change the tickets for you and a guest. It could be a great start to your new relationship if you offer your new man an all-expenses-paid trip to Florida. But Mark, I wanted to go to Florida with you. We could postpone the separation. In fact, I'm considering calling off the whole thing. Now that I've had time to reflect, I'm not as unhappy as I thought, Susan pleaded. I'm sorry. I've thought about this a lot. I don't believe I could be content knowing the possibility of divorce hangs over us. Even if you retract the divorce now, you can't erase what you said, and I can't erase the images in my mind of what you and Michael might have done. I'll likely proceed with the divorce regardless of your decision, though I can't fathom life without you and being only a part-time father to my girls. With that, I retreated to the guest bedroom upstairs. Susan was devastated and knew only one person to turn to Rachel. She called her immediately. "Hello, Susan. What's wrong?" Rachel asked. "Everything has gone wrong. Mark found an apartment and his secretary is already flirting with him. Even my sister wants to date him. The worst part is, he had tickets to Florida for our anniversary and gave them to me to use, but he won't go. He said I could use them to take my new boyfriend. What do I do now?" Rachel let out a chuckle. "What's the problem? You and Michael can have a blast in the sun, fun adventure, and some amazing lovemaking." "No, I found out Michael is married, and his wife and kids are moving here soon. I can't go to Florida with him. I want to go with Mark." "Hold on a second," Rachel interjected. "I think I just realized what's going on. Wow, Mark is more cunning than I gave him credit for. He claims he booked the trip ages ago, but it was just a ploy to manipulate you into feeling guilty and stopping the divorce proceedings. Don't worry. With your looks and charm, you'll find boyfriends as good as, if not better than Michael in no time, all while keeping your marriage and family intact. Oh my goodness, I never imagined he could be so deceitful. He'll pay for this." "Thank you, Rachel. I was on the verge of giving up, but now I'm more determined than ever. He's going to regret this dearly. Let's chat later." When I came downstairs with a small suitcase, Susan glared at me. "So you're trying to make it look like you're already moving out. No worries, goodbye, and good riddance." Actually, I was just taking a few things to the apartment to avoid carrying too much at once and startling the girls. Lauren mentioned I could move some stuff in before the 1st, since the apartment is empty anyway, I explained. "Your attitude seems different from earlier. Let me guess. You were talking to your marriage guru, Rachel, again. She's quite the expert at divorce, isn't she?" "Don't try to provoke me by insulting Rachel. She's on my side. She saw right through your Florida ticket scheme. You fabricated that tale just to coerce me into giving up everything. Nice try, but I still want a divorce and can't wait to finalize it. There are plenty of guys out there who desire me and are willing to meet my needs," Susan snapped. "You're absolutely right, especially about the attention you'll get from other guys. I have no doubt you'll have numerous offers once they realize you're available. I've always considered myself incredibly fortunate to have such a stunning woman like you, a fantastic partner in raising our children, and until recently, a faithful wife and lover. You're wrong about the Florida trip, and I can prove it. Just give Helen Jones at Sunshine Travel Agency a call. I'll dial her now." I pulled out my phone and dialed. "Hi, Helen, it's Mark Wilson. My wife is on speakerphone, so you can fill her in on the details about the trip. She has a few questions." "Of course, Mark," Helen responded. "I'm really sorry you won't be able to go. It seems like you were genuinely looking forward to surprising your wife and enjoying your vacation." "What specifics do you need, Mrs. Wilson?" Susan demanded. "Could you please outline exactly what's included in this trip?" "Certainly. This is our 7-day excursion spanning 2 locations. It covers accommodations at our top-rated hotels, meals, transportation, hula lessons, luau dinners, traditional tiki performances, opportunities for surfing, swimming, and dancing, all set in a romantic atmosphere. Many couples have found it to be a transformative experience for their marriage." "When did my husband initially arrange this trip?" Susan asked, certain this would expose my deception. "Let me check," Helen said, pausing for a moment. "According to our records, he inquired about it approximately 3 months ago, then finalized his selection for this specific trip 2 months ago, with payment made 2 weeks thereafter. Yesterday, he contacted us to cancel the booking, resulting in a 20 refund. I was surprised when he suggested that you could still go and find another companion. That says a lot about the kind of husband he is. You're quite fortunate. Any other inquiries? No further questions. I'll get back to you soon with the name, Susan replied, trying to process the information. After the call ended, she tried to anticipate Rachel's response. You think you've outsmarted me once more, don't you? You and Helen conspired to fabricate this Florida trip story before I even mentioned divorce. Well, I've caught on, she said, feeling a twisted sense of pride in her deduction. I let out a heavy sigh. You should talk to your parents. What do my parents have to do with this? She snapped. Who do you think will look after the girls while we're away? I asked. Fine, let's call them, Susan responded, caught off guard. No need to rush into it, dear. I'm already dialing, I stated. Mark, wait. But her mother answered the call, recognizing the number. Susan, how are the girls? Glad you called. Hi, Mark, her mother said. Hi, Mom, Susan greeted hesitantly. Mom, this is Mark. We're on speakerphone. Hold on, let me get Dad too, she said. In the background, we heard her father's voice. Frank, it's Mark and Susan. Pick up, honey. What's going on, guys? Frank joined the conversation. When Susan remained silent, I spoke up. Susan knows now, so no need to keep it a secret. We're sorry I can't go, but I didn't mention why when I called earlier. I hope it's not health-related. When you called this morning and said we wouldn't babysit the girls for your Florida trip, we were disappointed. We were looking forward to having them with us for 7 days, and we felt bad for Susan that you couldn't go with her. We know how much she wants to go, but she'd rather go with you than anyone else. Have you decided who to take, Susan? It'll be tough for whoever stays, her father commented. No, Mom, I haven't decided yet. How long ago did Mark discuss the Florida trip with you? She asked, sensing a trap. I'm not sure. Frank, do you remember? It was around New Year's, wasn't it? Her father replied. Almost sure, 2 or 3 months ago. He mentioned it early so we could stock up on snacks. These two can eat anything and never gain weight, her mother said. Mark, Susan's mother interjected, concerned. Is everything okay with Susan? Why are you asking when Mark talked to us? Did something happen between you two? Oh, God, did you break up? No, Mom, not exactly. We decided we needed some space, some time apart to recharge our marriage and maybe reconcile, Susan clarified. Dear, I'm not going to lie to your parents. They've always been honest with me, I interjected. Mom, Susan began. I didn't mean to cause alarm. What I meant was that the first step in the divorce process is a 60-day separation. I hope this time will help me find myself, explore new opportunities, and better myself so I can be a better wife and mother, Susan explained. And that's coming from me, Mom, Frank's voice boomed. I know when I'm being fed a line. Susan, do you have a boyfriend on the side? No, Dad, not at all, Susan denied, her voice shaking. I thought about stepping in, but decided against it. Frank continued, his wife's sobs echoing in the background. I can't believe you could do something like this. We raised you better. I'm so disappointed. Don't expect us to welcome your new man with open arms, Susan. We're so sorry, Mark. At least promise us you'll let us see our grandchildren after the divorce. As Susan's tears intensified, she interrupted. Mark has blown this whole thing out of proportion. I take my words back. No divorce, no separation. I'll talk to you later when everything calms down. Seeing Susan in such distress, I said, You need to pull yourself together. The girls will be home soon. I grabbed my suitcase and headed toward the door. Where are you going? Didn't you hear? I don't want a divorce. You don't have to go anywhere, she pleaded. You decided on divorce without consulting me. Now you think you can change it all back just because things aren't going your way. You don't seem to understand that I have a voice in this too. After what I've learned about you over the past week, I'm not sure giving up on the divorce is a good idea. I'll stay in the apartment tonight. Mark, please don't go. I am sorry. You said it was fine before I brought up this nonsense about wanting a divorce. Can we just move past it and return to how things were? You claimed you were happy. I was happy too, but I can't forget how you admitted to being unhappy and planning to have an affair with Michael. Like I said, you've already committed infidelity. Karen mentioned she could easily draft the divorce papers since their standard terms might even serve them tomorrow. I won't sign them, Susan retorted sharply. That doesn't matter. All Karen needs to do is ensure you're officially served. She might do it at your workplace, perhaps even in front of Michael. We could claim alienation of affection. I could even involve your boss for violating company policy, but that's too far. I need you to be able to care for the girls after the divorce. I know. I'll speak to Michael's wife. That should suffice for payback. Why are you so harsh? I love you, and you love me. Is there anything I can do to make things right? You said divorce would be tough on both of us. Don't you want to avoid this pain? I promise never to bring up this divorce mess again. Please stay and let's work it out, Susan pleaded tearfully. I remained silent, letting her words sink in. Susan felt a glimmer of hope. I pledge to be the best wife in the world. I won't look at another man. I've given you nearly 18 years of a strong marriage, 2 wonderful children, and supported your business even when it meant you came home late and dirty. I'm so proud of your success. Everyone makes mistakes. Please give me one more chance. Please, she implored. Finally, I responded, here's what we'll do. I'll take my suitcase and sleeping bag to the apartment tonight. I want you to write down a few things. Your words and actions have hurt me deeply. If your responses meet my expectations, I'll consider calling off or at least delaying the divorce. I'll return by 7. Maybe send the kids to your parents or friends so we can speak freely. Yes, thank you. What should I write? She asked eagerly. First, I expect an apology for starting this whole situation. Not just an apology. Beg for my forgiveness. Second, instruct Michael to stop contacting you. If he doesn't comply, warn him that I can take legal action against him and your company. Third, list all the reasons why I should consider staying married to you. Finally, call Rachel and tell her you never want to speak to her again. This is non-negotiable. If I ever hear about Rachel's input again, I will leave immediately. Do you understand? Yes, dear, I understand. I'll do everything and be ready by 7. Good. See you at 7. I grabbed my suitcase and left. Susan focused on the final task, mentally rehearsing her words to Rachel. She dialed Rachel and said, listening to you is my worst mistake. Because of you, I nearly lost everything dear to me. Do not contact me via call, text, email, or even think of me. If our paths cross in public, steer clear or I won't be responsible for my actions. Feeling a surprising sense of relief after confronting Rachel, Susan dialed Michael and relayed my instructions. She recounted his desperate plea to meet one last time, but she shut him down, resorting to insults and accusations of him being inadequate. She warned him that she would involve his wife if he continued causing trouble. To her surprise, listing reasons why I should stay married turned out to be the easiest task. Liberated from desiring more than what she had with me, Susan reflected on the joys we shared. She compiled an entire list, hopeful that it would impress me. She expressed remorse for the divorce ruse, acknowledging how foolish and self-centered she had been. As 7 approached, Susan felt prepared and hopeful. But when the hour struck and I hadn't returned, worry crept in. 5 minutes later, I reappeared without my luggage, my expression unchanged. Susan tried to remain composed as she handed me her responses. Here are my answers. I hope you reconsider. I read through the list for a long time, tears welling up in my eyes. Seeing me cry, Susan began to weep too, thinking this might be a hopeful sign. Susan, this is really impressive, I said, my voice shaking. Susan's heart leaped as she rose to embrace me, but I gestured for her to stay seated. Your effort is commendable, but I'm not sure you understand the extent of the pain you've caused me. I fear I must proceed with the divorce, I explained. Susan was devastated. It felt as if her heart had been shattered. Collapsing to the floor, she sobbed uncontrollably, her grief overwhelming. I've ruined my family's life. I'm the worst person alive. I don't deserve to live. How could I have been so foolish? She wailed. I knelt beside her, whispering, now you understand how I felt. As Susan continued to cry, I approached the door but paused, glancing back at her. During our separation, are we allowed to see other people? Through her tears, Susan struggled to speak. If dating others is permitted, what are your plans for Friday night? Would you like to have dinner and catch a movie? I asked. You're asking me out on a date? Susan exclaimed, wiping her tears. Yes, I believe our old relationship has changed, but perhaps we can start anew, I suggested. With renewed hope, Susan rushed toward me. Yes, 1,000 times yes, she cried.